Welcome back. In the U.S., last night, primetime hearing of the January 6th committee, more revelations. And also, the committee announced that there would be more hearings in September, just a few months from the midterm congressional election. So to help us analyze the consequences of all this, I'm happy to be joined by Guillaume Lavoie, associate member of the Raoul-Dandurand Chair of Diplomatic and Strategic Studies. Guillaume, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Great to be with you.
So, Guillaume, tell me, what were your thoughts? What stands out from last night's hearings?
Well, one thing is that one would think that it was impossible to discover more things in terms of the behavior of the former president. And basically the way it was presented is that you had on one side of the screen or the story the very insurrection, people forcing their way into the Capitol building, yelling and chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," the vice president of the United States. Mm-hmm. And then in the comfort of a dining room, the very president of the country watching it all unfold on Fox News, and for 3 long hours, sort of enjoying or watching peacefully what was happening, and basically only using his time and influence not to call off the mob, not to call in the National Guard or the Army for that matter, but calling senators and members of Congress in order to put a stop to the counting of the votes or sort of certifying the victory of Joe Biden. And it was one after the other, Democrats, but mostly Republicans, calling on Donald Trump, say, put an end to this. And he would go on to say, well, I guess the people knocking on doors are more concerned than you are about the election. So it was a completely flabbergasting presentation. And quite frankly, by his actions and also his inaction, Trump has committed acts of treason or renouncement of his oath or insurrection, which is extremely grave, of course.
So we've had many hearings now, a lot of evidence coming from Trump's supporters, people who had worked with him, who were close advisors, who were Trump Republicans all the way. Guillaume, now with what we've seen so far, would you be willing to say there's enough evidence to show that Donald Trump was trying to overthrow the U.S. government here?
There's certainly enough evidence to present to indict the former president. Now the question is, because the committee was going to recommend that that's what happened, but it's not his call. The call is for the Department of Justice and the Attorney General, who's a Democratic administration. And then the question is this justice or vengeance? And at first, I have to say that I was more of the school that, look, let's put this behind us. If you indict Trump, is going to divide the country even more. And now, quite frankly, I've been listening to Liz Cheney on this, where she said, look, this happened. And if you let it go because it's more convenient politically, then you no longer have a system of justice. And I think the department should table accusations. And perhaps in order to fight back, I'm inclined to think that Donald Trump is likely to announce his candidacy for 2024. I don't think he'll go through with it, but to make it more of a partisan perception that he's being accused only because he's trying to get the presidency back for the next term. So it's going to be very difficult. So in the end, the first thing is not so much from the judicial branch, it's the political branch. You know, Boris Johnson remained in power all this time because he had the support of his own caucus.
Correct.
So far, except for I would consider heroes, Mitt Romney, Representative Kissinger, Liz Cheney, Republicans who've said enough is enough with Donald Trump are very few to come by and are taking this at very high political personal risk. So I'm not sure. I wonder, when is it that the Republican Party is going to say, enough, drop this guy. Maybe it's not going to happen.
When we look at the ratings, apparently the ratings for the hearings are actually growing, and so there's more interest. But again, that doesn't mean that a lot of Republicans are watching this. But at the same time, do you feel, with what you've been seeing and analyzing, that this situation, what we're learning from the hearings, could have an impact on the midterms? Up until now, we're still looking at probably the Republicans taking the House, but now there's been talk that maybe the Senate could stay Democratic. What do you think?
I don't think that will have an impact on the midterm. People are far more concerned about inflation, or the bases are quite motivated with issues such as access to abortion. Roe v. Wade has thrown the entire midterm elections into something of some sort of uncharted territory, which might help the Democrats a little bit, or just to avoid complete collapse. I think this will damage Donald Trump's candidacy a bit more. Not so much that the base is going to renounce Trumpism. Maybe the base will say, well, you know what, there are other candidates who could apply Trump's recipe without the downside,
the baggage,
without the baggage. And I would have some sort of a open eye looking towards Florida, where Ron DeSantis has showed us that he's taken the recipe and bettered he bettered the instructions, sort of.
Yeah, and going back to Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, remember, he came out on the national scene when Barack Obama tried to nominate him for the Supreme Court. He came out earlier this week saying no one is above the law. Do you get the sense that he's going to move on Donald Trump?
I think that's getting likelier by the day, because in the end, you can't ignore the revelations, because it's quite terrible. Trump organized systematically an armed mob to come to Washington and to literally march on the Capitol. And he wanted to lead the crowd. He was the chief, not the commander-in-chief, but the chief insurrectionist, which is a crime in the United States law, because it's clearly a violation of his oath. I think it would be not a partisan issue, but I think it would be a shame to some sort of ignore such a huge demonstration of the facts. Now, how it's going to be perceived on the short term, it may be more difficult, but on the long term, and if we are to be the code of our loyalty to the generations to come, command to indict the former presidents. So we'll see if he does it. But then if the Department of Justice goes forward, they better nail the guy, because it would be the worst scenario of all would be an indictment and then Trump escaping justice by beating the system, and then he would become some sort of a mythical persona in politics that just can't lose. And that would perhaps even contribute to Trump being above the laws of gravity, sort of.
He'd become a martyr.
Perhaps, yes. Yeah. And that will be the point. So I think that's important. It's very painful. Liz Cheney is likely to lose a renomination campaign by double digits. So there is definitely a civil war within the Republican Party that's not happening now. And so far, that hasn't changed.
And hearings in September.
Yeah, I guess it's going to be the gift that keeps on giving, but not so much because they are spreading the demonstration far and thin, but there's so much. And quite frankly, I think the one testimony that took everyone by surprise was the special assistant of the president, who presented that Trump was yelling at the Secret Service because he wanted to go to the Capitol, and then Steve Bannon coordinating with extreme right-wing groups, and then Trump watched it all unfold. And at the end, perhaps someone could really put a nail in Trump's coffin would be Mike Pence. And so far, there is the John F. Kennedy Profiling Courage Award in the United States, taking a stand that makes you unpopular in the short term. That was called by the notion of the state sort of. And then I think Mike Pence has revealed himself as a great leader in a time of extreme crisis.
Guillaume Lavoie, fascinating insights. Really appreciate you taking the time this afternoon.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Guillaume Lavoie, associate member of the Raoul-Dandurand Chair of Diplomatic and Strategic Studies.